for that. And you all can see my screen?
Uh-huh. Dan, I'm going to sneak out on you about 4 o'clock, so don't think that I'm ignoring you. I just need to go 4.
Okay, I won't take it personally, Marcia. Thanks for the heads up. I had initially opted to include some conversations about Scratch, some of its functionality. But what I wanted to do was also just start with a quick code.org plug. My understanding is that my 2 co-workers, Kim Clark and Marcia Torgrud, will be the first code.org trainers in South Dakota for sure, but possibly even in a much wider range. So I wanted to just go over some of the things that would be available to code.org. While a savvy teacher could jump straight into Scratch, code.org I think kind of supports a more involved or in-depth exploration of the Scratch platform. So they not only have they built these courses in code.org, but they've also created kind of an LMS for tracking student login, student information, and student progress through these courses. I think one of the selling points of any kind of coding curriculum, the tough sell for a teacher is, well, there's just not a lot of extra time in the day for them to create these structures or these systems for tracking student information, for designing lessons, for planning these activities. And I think the good news is for all teachers is that actually the work has already been done. Has anyone had any experience with code.org?
Yes, we started it last year, K-5, as an after-school enrichment opportunity for our students, and I fell in love with it so much that I taught it to every classroom for half an hour a week this school year. And so I'm anxious to learn more about Scratch because I feel like we're kind of ready for the next step. But yeah, code.org, I can't say enough great things. I've been to some trainings in Iowa. Yeah, and it doesn't get any more user-friendly and kid-friendly as far as engagement. So yeah, I would absolutely echo your plug for code.org.
Right on, thank you. Have you had a chance to go through the Course 4 beta?
Some of it, yeah.
Okay. I was kind of excited by it. I felt a little bit like Course 1, 2, and 3 were maybe on the elementary side, but I felt like it kind of escalated with Course 4 when I went through it. Liz, have you had any exposure to code.org?
Yes, we used it for that week, for that code week.
Okay.
Some things with some of the elementary classes, but I'm just on baby steps with it. Don't know a lot, but we really liked it that week when we tried it.
Yeah, it really is. They really did their homework, and I actually support this endeavor completely because as technology becomes more and more ubiquitous, it really doesn't make a whole bunch of sense that we would completely eliminate it from a K-12 curriculum. I think in some places in the data actually, and I think the data, I'm not going to link it here, but the data is a little bit disturbing, I believe, on code.org when you see just the tiny amount of South Dakota students who are taking AP computer science courses or pursuing computer science degrees. I'm not suggesting that it's for everyone, but it is really strange how this field is growing exponentially, and the children pursuing this degree is just, it's almost stagnant. So I'm actually really glad that you guys are attending. Let me head straight into.
One more little plug, Dan.
Yeah, go.
You know, because Abby's already well on her way, but Liz, Kim and I are going to do regional trainings then around the state of South Dakota on code.org to get a lot of teachers started in doing that kind of thing. Hopefully we can talk Julie Erickson into doing it via time membership trainings around the state.
Sounds good. I'll be there, Marcia.
Okay. You better not miss it.
Yeah.
So it was kind of an interesting opportunity that Kim and Marcia definitely took advantage of, and it was a definite need, because if you look at the trainings that, like, you had to go to Iowa, Abby, there's nothing really. I think we saw one that was, I think, in Sioux City, which was the closest that we could get, which is just untenable for like West River people. That's tough. So heading into Scratch, let me give you a little bit of background information. The coding, the programming that you're going to do in code.org, I felt like it was a little bit more user friendly. If a kid is going through course 1, they're going to give you some instructions on a new bit of code, and then they're going to say, now try and use this code in an activity, in a lesson, get this bird through this maze or something like that. So it goes very, very linear, very step by step, and it kind of comes up with a fairly easy approach. When you go into Scratch, when you go into the create the Scratch editor itself, can you guys see my screen? Anyone able to see my screen? You're all muted, so I can't.
Yeah.
Okay. The visual. Right on. So it's, how do I say? It's more of a blank slate when you first get in there, and I think this is a little bit intimidating. I don't know if you would give a kid a blank piece of paper and a box of 16 million crayons and say, color me a picture. It's a little bit intimidating for some kids. So there are some parameters, some structures within the software itself that I think facilitate its presentation. And so I'm going to start by going through those things, and then I'll go through the individual things in Scratch. But so on the main website, give me a thumbs up if you can see, like, we're on the scratch.mit.edu. So this is the main website, and it really has an absolutely amazing amount of stuff. It would take me days to go through everything that's on this website. It really is a growing community, and it's growing exponentially fast. And it is a community in the sense that anything that's done here, you can share it, you can post it on a discussion board, you can ask for feedback, a lot of teachers, I think, get uncomfortable about online discussion forums. Actually, don't blame them. But the Scratch forum is actually fairly well moderated, and I think a large team of moderators are policing it multiple times a day. So you have this very basic interface. Can you guys see my mouse? Create at the top, thumbs up, thanks ladies. Explore, discuss. So this is going to be the basic kind of our very introductory forum into this particular software. You can also click here for try it out. You can see samples of what students have done, and you can also join Scratch. Some people would like to join it and download the file for offline work, and that's a definite possibility. If you look further down here on the main Windows screen, you have About Scratch, some general information. You have some links to some Scratch stuff for educators. There's a giant amount of support stuff that I'm going to have to at least give you the link to the website for, so you'll be able to explore it at your leisure. And then there's some stuff for parents. So and maybe I'll start with a help just to show you. So like I said, I wouldn't just give the kid the box of crayons and say, do a picture. This is going to be problematic, I think, in Scratch. And so you're going to want to have a more directed investigation. So I'm going to click this help over here. This is one way to do it. Can you see my new screen? So we have some very basic introductory stuff. We have just the step-by-step. It'll show kids this process of getting into it. We have these very kind of basic starter projects that illustrate some of the different command blocks. We have even YouTube videos. If that's not enough for you as an educator, we have these getting started guides. We have the scratch card challenge, and we have more video tutorials. All of these things, I believe, would offer a teacher the possibility of scaffolding a directed exploration into a particular thing. Like I said, this is already designed in the curriculum associated with code.org. But it's kind of open in Scratch, so that would be my only concern as you decide to explore and play and investigate. So let me go back to this main entry. So a lot of times I think people will ignore that help button, but your ticket to entryway would be that it's the help place. It's a really solid link. So right now you have an option, which I'm just going to click is create. It also works if you click try it out. So I've already clicked created, and I've done some playing around with some of my code. Can you guys see my screen? So what we have here is we have our sprite, and this is kind of this is the guy that we direct via various lines of code. We have our code bank here in the middle, and then we have our workstation. And I have two separate code structures that I was just playing around with, and this gets my sprite, the cat, to do some different things. The reason why this is a little bit scarier and more intimidating than code.org is that code.org just has one bank where you have a very limited possible set of interactions. If you look at the top of our menu, we have a lot of different banks, and we have banks of banks. So we're not going to worry about all the other things from the get-go. We're just going to look at scripts, and we're going to look at the different kinds of scripts about how this can possibly manipulate our sprite, the cat, who I believe is named Scratch. So the first blue blocks, some of this will be redundant for you. You guys have been, if you've played with code.org, you've seen it, you know that there is some commonalities. My understanding on the outset is that scratch.mit.edu are the forefathers, the original authors, the creators of this particular thing, and it has since then been duplicated in many ways, shapes, or forms across many different areas, across many different mediums, browsers, platforms, Android, Apple. It's been duplicated. Maybe don't quote me on that, but my initial understanding, my outside understanding, is that Scratch was the original. So if you see some similarities between code.org, the software that code.org uses, I believe, is called Blockly. If you see some similarities between that and what we have at Scratch, it's because it was emulated from the Scratch setup. That's my understanding. You might want to double check and verify that before you directly quote me, but I think that's actually the case. So if you've done code, you recognize some of these movement blocks. We have turning a certain amount of degrees. We have moving into directions. We have the reason why. One of the things that I really like these things for is if you were trying to instruct students on geometry, shapes, angles, this is a fantastic interface to not only play around with. So the kid, it's one thing to see it on paper, it's one thing to understand some of the mathematics behind the shapes and angles, but it's another thing completely for a kid to play with it. And I actually am blocked over here, but I'm going to show you one more thing. Can you see my entire screen? Okay. So if you look at the far right, you'll see some tips, and I'm just going to close this. And I'm going to just click it again up here at the top. So I'm in the creation window. I'm creating my own project, and up here it's tips. I'm just going to turn that on. And so what you see here on the right is actually, some of it's duplicate from what I showed you initially, but all of these things are different projects that you can have kids begin using, begin trying to create, and maybe trying modifying on their own. So that's on the right. You guys can see the right side of the. Can you see the tip guide, the step by step?
Dan, I can't see the tip.
Okay.
Yep, you just have to move the video boxes. If you click on our video, then you can drag that to the middle of the screen or someplace else.
Yeah, thanks. I've drugged mine to the bottom, and that works out great. Now I see them.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So that is basically the same thing that I showed you in the initial help menu. And this would be a great place to get to for a directed, scaffolded activity where a kid could maybe modify it, or a team of kids could maybe duplicate one of these processes and then modify it to make it their own. So you also have the how-to section, which has some detailed information about effects, about animations, about games, stories, music. And then you even have even more information detailing all of these things about these different types of blocks: color-coded blocks, motion blocks, look blocks, sound blocks, pen blocks, data blocks. So it really, although they didn't define the parameters of exploration, they did their homework as well. Everything is supported, tons of information. It's really kind of an interesting structure that they have going. And when I was looking through this, I was thinking to myself, and it's kind of interesting, I think traditionally educators have often taught vocabulary, like the first thing I'd like you to do is look at the motion blocks, and this is what each motion block can do. So you have the move 10 steps blocks, you have the turn 15 degree blocks, you have the point in this direction block, you have go to these places, go to this thing, a bunch of different things. It becomes a little bit complicated, but it is maybe not necessarily going to be, the kids, I guess, would decide how far they want to take it. But I think I would, I guess, caution a teacher from saying, sending a kid to explore like what's over here in the motion blocks. I think some of these things are much better learned through interaction and through playing with. So if you can see my line of code, well, let me go through all the blocks. So we have looks, so we have motion, and we have looks. Some of you will probably be familiar with these just from looking at code.org, but the similarity ends here pretty quickly, and we get to much more, I believe, capable, much more complex system of interactions than I've seen what was presented in even up to course 4 in the code.org structure of the Blockly setup. So I think a lot of these things would be self-explanatory, like say hello for 2 seconds, switch costumes. One of the different activities for the sprite is to create a dance party. I believe that's listed over here on the step-by-step, like this getting started with Scratch. This very first thing is to create a dance. And one of the ways that it makes it appear that the cat is dancing is that it times a sound and a switching of costumes. So all of that would be illustrated when you go through some of these things. But that's kind of, the cat isn't actually dancing, it's just creating the illusion of a dance. And I think a lot of times that's what computers are good at, creating the illusion of something. We go on to sound files. One time I did a presentation and I had 50 people making the cat meow. And if you've never heard 50 computers meowing at the same time, it's maybe a little bit intense. But a lot of different options for sound. You can actually record your own sound and actually create your own blocks, which I believe opens up a giant range of possibilities for integration with different content areas in a classroom. You also have the pen function. This is one of my favorite things about the code.org exploration. the geometric, the angle expiration. Sometimes it would say, create a shape using this number of angles. And I really kind of enjoyed that. And I thought that was challenging. And I wanted to be able to emulate that process with students in Scratch. And so I actually have the sample of that emulation over here in the workstation, but it was a little bit tough. Some of this was automatically written into the code.org system where I think I presented some information 3 or 4 times. How do I clear the screen? So if you give the cat a system of commands, he'll follow it and he'll draw some different things on the screen. Well, how do you get rid of it? You just have this clear icon. Can you guys see that clear? So what you have at the bottom is I've created just a reset kind of icon. So I double click that and it clears all the text and it repoints it in the initial starting direction. And that's kind of that's a pro tip that actually some people are not always aware of how to. I think Julie saw me ask that question. How do I erase these lines? And I was like, I think you have to start over. But it's just a clear command. So the pen commands are all listed here. If you weren't satisfied with that information, you're like, there's got to be more to it. You can actually click on a wiki link for all of these different subject areas. And this would be available through a couple ways. I think the help window would be one of the ways. You can actually click to this via the tip line that I showed you earlier. But all of the details, mathematical details and supporting details of the structure of colors and how computers translate color is listed here on the wiki page. There's actually human beings really are ridiculously amazing. Someone actually wrote some code about detecting the actual RGB value of a pixel. And to me, it's fascinating that someone took the time to even do that. I don't know if kids are ever going to get to this level or ever care about this particular thing, but I just want to make sure you understand that every little thing is supported in scratch.mit.edu, wiki pages, and some other things. So I was playing around with this particular sorry, can you guys see my screen again? I was playing around with this particular thing, and I was trying to duplicate some of these processes. So there's a couple other of things that you'd like to do. I believe in code.org when there isn't a green arrow structure. You could just hit a button to start it automatically. So this is not green arrow, green flag. And there's some other things other systems that you can do, waiting commands, repeating commands. Some of these will be reminiscent of what you've seen in code.org. Some of these will be also new. If-then statements, wait until statements, repeat until statements. I've never seen this in Blockly, but you have some sensing commands. You can actually create video sensing commands where you can set up a game where the ball is moving across the screen and it actually responds to the location of your hands in a video feed. So it's pretty ridiculous, the functionality. I don't know how far young kids would be able to take this, but I think, like I said, the human brain is amazing what people can do when given some problem solving, some creative problem solving skills. I just wanted to go over this particular bit of code that I wrote. I wrote this earlier today, and I want to make sure that you understand what's exactly happening with this. I import this event system here, this flag, and that just means that every time I hit this button over here, it will begin the series of code. The first command that I have underneath that is repeat 40 times. And so what that does is it makes sure that everything within this repeat bar, if you guys are able to follow my mouse, everything in here will be repeated 40 times. So the first step is that it sets the pen size to 3. And then it has a subroutine within that loop. It puts the pen down, it changes the color by 10, it moves the cat 45 steps, and then it turns the cat 18 degrees. Once it's done that 5 times, it continues with these other systems. It puts the pen up, and then it goes back to this particular location. And I think I just showed you. Could you see that actually what it does? Thumbs up. So I'll just stop it. And so what I wanted just to give you some possible ideas for is how that you would modify that to get a different result. Does anyone want, so you see some variables here. These are the variables that would be determined. Do you see this go to X, Y variable? This turn 18 degrees variable, this move 45 variable, this change pen color by 10 variable, and this repeat 5 times, set pen size to 3, repeat 40. Does anyone have any ideas for changing the variable to see how it would affect the sprite? I'm going to click my cheat here, which is clear and point in the direction. So you see the cat kind of goes back to the middle. If you don't like where the cat's at, you can grab the cat right here. But unless you use the clear command, all the lines would remain. Anyone want me to try a different number?
Have it move 50 instead of 45, or maybe 60 instead of 45.
Okay, let me try 60. And then we'll
20 degrees.
Okay, and let's try 20 degrees. So we've had a little bit of modification, and you remember the initial shape, which was kind of the curved star, the 4-pointed. So let's see how that results in another. Any other ideas for changing some numbers?
How many colors do we have available when you were adding your pen color by 10?
That's a good question. I don't think it's the normal spread of 16 million. But I think it has the coding for every visual color that the human eye can identify. But again, maybe don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure. So if you want to try to change the pen color by 25, we'll just reset it. Or maybe let's change the, let's just change another one, steps to 20, and let's go degrees to 45. Let's see what it does now. So it kind of makes it a shape within the shape. I'll stop it. Make it 75 steps and 33 degrees, and we changed the pen color by 20. So if you remember some of the code.org challenges, a lot of times to get past this particular stage, it required you to do some mental math and to calculate angles and to calculate the length of pixels and lines. So I was just having some fun playing with this. It has a it's ridiculous what it can do. So let me go back to the code.org site itself. And so if you can see here, I'm back at the top. This is just scratch.mit.edu. And what I want to click on now, I'm not creating anymore. I'm going to click explore. Like, what are people doing? This is kind of an interesting thing because you can see on your screen. Are you guys able to see my screen still? So you can see on my screen some of these latest projects, the hearts, how many people have loved it, how many people have started. Not sure what that symbol means, and how many people have viewed this particular project. So you can see what kids are doing. I have yet to find something inappropriate, so anytime someone posts a project, you'll see other people posting saying, hey, I like what you've done, or have you considered trying this, or this is an interesting choice of code that have you looked at this possibility? So there's a lot of different activities. These go from storytelling machines to games to school projects to like avatar creators. Once you give a kid the 16 million tools in a toolbox, sometimes kids can really run with it. And in my mind, they have a much better chance of running with it if you don't dump that box of tools on them, if you kind of guide them through the exploration into different areas. So you can also check out at the top studios. So there's different studios that are set up to different ends. Here's a studio committed to robots and androids and artificial intelligence. There's a Scratch science group. So as a savvy teacher, an educator, you might want to begin to collect and gather information based on some of these particular things. As you look over here, some of them, they're broken down by some very large categories. We have animations, we have art, we have games, music, and stories. A lot of different possibilities in the Scratch community. Am I forgetting something in Explore? Let me double check this. So heading back to the main Scratch site, I am exploring again. Nope, now I'm going to show you at the top. You see the next item, it's discuss. So we're looking at the discussion forums. It's massive. So here you would be able to find help for any particular project. I really feel like a lot of the initial exploration, the explorations where your students are getting their feet wet, you'll probably be able to find a helping system or structures for them without looking to any of these public or online forums. This is kind of like the next level. If you look at some of these posts, like there's 14,000 topics here. There's 135,000 posts here helping for scripts. What I'm taking from some of these is that what we're seeing is independent learners, kids who are saying, I'm not going to wait for my teacher to give me help. I'm going to figure out what I need to do. I'm going to get some help from the community. A little bit scary, online forums, but like I said, this one's fairly policed. So if something was inappropriate, it would probably be taken off. This next section that I wanted to show you, we're going to go back to the help section. Can you guys still see my screen? So we're looking at the different Scratch guides. I showed you these. There is some interesting Scratch statistics. Also the offline editor. I know sometimes when I go to a building, my internet just doesn't work. Having it downloaded ahead of time is a good idea, something to consider. One of the resources that we found for teacher support was Scratch Ed. The people from MIT created Scratch, I think, to kind of promote computer science instruction. And I think the people at Harvard didn't want to get outdone by those MIT folks, so they created Scratch Ed. And what I liked about Scratch Ed was that it had tons of guides, tons of resources, but specifically the option of exchanging resources between educators. If you're looking for a file, you are a social studies teacher, you do not have time to add any Scratch activities, you're not going to do an after-school program, you can find some curricular areas here. So 223 Scratch-related social studies lesson ideas. I can't overemphasize that enough. It's a very powerful thing. If you are considering employing Scratch, I would definitely consider using all of the resources they have available. I'm going to click back once, so I'm not going to show you too much more of that. So that's Scratch Ed. And again, I found that linked through the resources. I showed you the wiki, and that would be how you can find help articles on a lot of different things. This other section that I wanted to share with you was Scratch statistics. Kind of an interesting thing that they have going. As you can see here by this, can you guys see my chart? What we have on the left column is the monthly count of users, and at the bottom we have the dates. As you can see, the orange would be comments, the green would be new users, and the blue would be new projects. It is growing. In 2008, the inception of this, not very popular. Honestly, the internet's probably still growing here. In 2015, we've got a lot more. So this is some kind of interesting information that I think suggests that Scratch is taking off. It is growing. So we have the age distribution of users as you register for an account, which I recommend doing so you can save your projects. You have to input your age, your gender, and the country of origin. You can see users by country. It's definitely weighted for the USA. Monthly project shares, monthly comment activity. So some interesting data that they track using the Scratch interface. So heading back to the Scratch website, heading back to the help again, you have a couple more things. Julie and I know from experience that there's a few robot structures out there that you're able to kind of integrate with your Scratch. And there's a couple of other things that you can do. Those things to me feel a little bit like advanced kind of, this is pretty advanced level stuff. I don't know if we're going to be having our students reprogram some drones using Scratch until maybe later on in the game. So that's the basic structure of Scratch and some of the different things that you can look for. I'm going to take a pause real quick and open it up to any questions that Liz or Abby or Julie that you might have. Like I said, this probably could have easily been like an 8-hour presentation, so I feel like I just dumped a bunch of stuff on you guys. I hope I didn't scare anyone away. It really is kind of an easy thing, but it is something that I would begin slowly at first.
Daniel, can you tell us about student logins? Do they have to have email accounts, passwords, teacher monitoring? How? They
don't have the same structure that you've seen in code.org, and I know that sounds, yeah. They do require an email. They do have a sub-account system set up where an individual can put in an adult's email. I am not 100% sure about that structure. I don't know how what safety protocols are in place to avoid email communications from people that you don't want exchanging emails. That would be something that you would have to probably investigate on your own. I really did like the code.org structure where they had all those, they had the student logins, they had their names. That's trick.
Right.
They don't have it for Scratch, not that I've seen.
No, and I had asked, I contacted someone and they said they're developing it, but that's been probably 4 or 5 months ago. So they're probably still working on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I guess I'm surprised that they haven't done it yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if they developed it further. There are definite advantages to coming up with a structure of curriculum and coursework, but from my perspective, a lot of that stuff a teacher could do probably pretty quickly on their own. Like, I don't know if you need to track how or which ones of your students have mastered the movement block set or does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I did really like that code.org structure, and it would be neat to see Scratch come up with something. Just to have it available for a teacher who does not want to take the time to create a curriculum, to establish some explorations, that just wants kids to follow a preset path, so they leave there. I really don't know if coding is for everybody. I think a lot of these initial explorations are designed for everybody and are fun. But end game coding, like for computer video games or software, that's not for everyone. That stuff gets intense. And I think some people can get a headache from looking at a wall of code. So I really believe it's kind of like language instruction, where you want kids' brains, you want to open up those synapses and to get them firing. You want kids' brains to be wired to be able to fire for them, but you can't guarantee or require them to understand a new language or to study Spanish. It's not, you can, I would say, expose them to it, and hopefully they go where their interest leads them to. What I would say is also that because Scratch is a great exposure to these things, it's just not done enough. Like what Julie and I saw at some of our things where people were beginning to incorporate Scratch in after-school programs. We have a coding, but it's all optional, and so it's still not, I guess, universally exposed to South Dakota students.
Right. Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. That's why we really went from the after-school enrichment things last school year to giving up 4 or 5 hours of my day or my week to teach it to everyone. So if you ride the bus and you can't stay after school, you still have an option. So that's absolutely something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a quick plug because I just got these books, and I know Julie loves books as much as I do. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So that is specifically for Scratch. This is an Usborne book, and I'm pretty excited to test it out on my own kids this summer and kind of explore that way. But I thought this might be something good for parents and teachers as well. But yeah, there's my shameless plug before I have to leave for baseball practice. So I'm going to have to scoot out early.
Hey, Abby, I appreciate you showing up.
Yeah, no, thanks for doing it. Good seeing everyone else on here.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
Bye, guys.
I'll add your book to my list, Abby.
Okay, awesome. We'll see ya.
Thanks.
One thing that we really got into was Sketch Nation, and our kids were writing games, and that we were doing that before we did the code.org, and it's an app for the iPad, but you can also do it on the computers. Doesn't matter, not platform specific, and our kids have really high, if you look at some of the top games that are played, you're going to see some Garrettson kids. And this would be like our freshman class, 8th graders and freshmen that were doing this. So we really got into Sketch Nation. Last year we started, and it seems like your second year you really build on it more. And the guy that wrote Sketch Nation has even been in contact with our computer teacher.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because something didn't work. So he got a hold of him, and then he wanted to know, well, how are you using it with your kids? And he kind of started looking at some of our kids' games and realized that our kids were the ones writing the stuff out there that were getting the most hits. It's kind of, you can write a game like Angry Bird. You can, you might want to look at Sketch Nation. It's worse than Scratch. I was looking at Scratch for maybe, I was thinking 6th, 7th graders. Am I wrong, or?
I don't disagree. I think I need to share my vision of if I was like a 6th grade teacher, or if I was an elementary teacher, I would probably want I picture a curriculum beginning with different projects. So you remember that list that I showed you? Like, so you click on create,
Mm-hmm.
and then once you're in this create thing, which is kind of scary because you suddenly are on this kind of giant cliff of like, what are the possibilities here? There's so many things.
Mm-hmm.
So can you see the right margin with animate your name, make music, race to the finish?
Yes.
What I picture, so if you did like a once a week after school kind of program, like in 1 month, we'd say we're going to animate your name. In another month, we're going to make some music. Not only would they follow the scripted guidelines, but they would also have time to modify it and make it their own. I think you could probably find some really smart, savvy, like 4th, 3rd grade kids that could jump right into Scratch and just handle it. But I think for some of the deeper explorations, like the more complicated, intricate stuff, it gets crazy when you look through some project samples. It does get a little bit more advanced, maybe even upper junior high school, and even high school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Liz, I would also say that you can play with Scratch and become very good at it, but this doesn't necessarily, well, that's wrong. This would confer some skill in learning another computer language, but you wouldn't, how do I say, you wouldn't be speaking the other language right away. You would still need to learn what the words mean in the different languages. So just because I'm an expert in Scratch doesn't mean that I can program in C++ or Visual Basic or any of these other languages. Does that make sense, Liz?
Yes, it does. Yep.
And I think people misunderstand, like, that this is, it prepares you for the structure of machine language, not necessarily the specific nature of the different machine languages. I think a computer curriculum, you're going to want to cover all of your bases. So you're going to include coding, but you're also going to include some of these other things like website development, HTML, video editing, manipulation, and these other things. I think you're going to want to cover the gamut. I think to really, are you familiar? There's a curriculum that these 2 gals from Southern California created that's being tested in South Dakota. Are you familiar with that one?
No, what is it?
I am going to have to look up I never remember the name. I'm going to have to look it up and I'll email it to you. But it's
I would appreciate that. Yeah.
It's being test piloted here in South Dakota. I know a team meets once every couple of months. They are attempting to modify the curriculum to make it South Dakota specific, and it runs the gamut from like creating a PowerPoint to creating your own custom website using only HTML. So it's
kind of the whole curriculum.
Yes, the whole 9 yards. It includes chapters on Scratch and some other things. I think it's all a great framework that you as the computer educator could probably modify and make it fit your needs specifically, to cut and trim things off that you felt were unnecessary. And but let me make a note of that, and I will contact you about that curriculum. You can download the whole thing. Every single bit of it is available online as a PDF. And I don't know if I have the South Dakota specific data set, but one of our Thai employees is a part of that team, and they might be able to provide us with the actual South Dakota version lesson plans that they were required to teach their students and then come back to the team and report on what they liked, what they didn't like, what worked, what didn't work, how they would change the lesson. So it's pretty good stuff. And that's about it. Let me double check my agenda to make sure that I covered all. I forgot some stuff. Actually, I'm not surprised. Julie's probably not surprised either. One of the other things that I probably didn't mention was that you, and Julie can speak about this in more detail, but there are no intellectual property rights. All of my efforts on here, I cannot own. I cannot sue you for using. I cannot sue you for modifying. They never belong to me. And I know some people are, maybe that feels a little bit non-capitalist, but it actually ends up being a decent deal in an educational kind of exploratory atmosphere where I can just go to the Scratch website and I can go down here and I can see can you see my screen still that says what the community is remixing?
Yes.
So, like Oreo Maker, I just click on it. Who doesn't love Oreos? I wouldn't I wouldn't recommend just sending a kid to a project that you haven't scouted out. But you guys are both adults, so we're just gonna look at this Oreo. You can see the instructions here. You can see the notes and credits. I don't know what it's gonna do, but I'm gonna click it. So it looks like some sort of recipe maker. Are you guys okay with that?
Sure, that's kind of cool.
Cinnamon, lemon, shortcake. We can click next. We can double it. We can triple it. So a kid made this. So I'm going to stop it real quick. And what I want to know is like what they did. Like how does this look? So I'm sorry. Did you see that where I just clicked, Liz? Let me go.
Yeah.
Can I go back once?
It was show something, right? Yep. Show inside. Yep.
So see inside. This is really a powerful thing because I can now see all of the code that they used to create this. See all the work that was involved and really see like the intricate. What it kind of tells a story not only of their work ethic, but their ability to run into a problem and to kind of see it through and to troubleshoot it. It really is a fascinating thing. So what you see here, Liz, is it looks like just a simple structure of code, but that's only for this initial sprite. I click on another sprite, it has its own code. Another sprite, its own code. Another sprite. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
It becomes ridiculously complex. And so this idea of remixing what someone else has made or done, I think it allows for a much more extensive exploration into the functionality of Scratch itself. Does that make sense? It's not It's not just limited to the 10 exploration projects. Or let me remind me if I showed you this. So help again at the top. And these scratch cards, I think Julie printed these out for some of our, Julie, remember these scratch cards? So kind of like challenges. So this initial guide, but these scratch cards, kind of similar to the tips section of the starter projects, but whatever. There's probably 15 of those activities, maybe 20 tops, right, Liz? This might be if you had a lot of time to commit to it, maybe a couple months worth of activities. However, when you consider that you have every single existing project available for remix, modification, expansion, and exploration, it kind of explodes. Do you understand? Like it's an unlimited number of options for exploration, for investigation. What could you do with it? How could you link this to this particular activity or this particular content area, this particular grade level? Anyway, I think I covered all of the different pieces. Scratch.ed, Scratch Ed, the people from Harvard. I showed you the statistics.
Yeah, that was cool.
I showed you the angles and the geometry. I showed you the project mods. I almost forgot it. I showed you the popularity of things. You can search for already made projects based on the number of times they've been viewed, based on the number of times they've been favorited, or based on the number of times they've been remixed. It is pretty powerful. I showed you some of the blocks examples. The message board of the community, and all of those tips things, and I think I've covered all of my bases. you have any other questions for me, Liz, before I?
No, this was really interesting. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm glad you attended. I really appreciate it, and I'm really looking forward to touching base again and you sharing your how it worked for you when you tried to incorporate some of these things with your own students.
Okay.
I do have on my notes, Liz. I'm going to email you It's one of those things that's always on the tip of my tongue, so it's a little bit frustrating that I never remember when I want to. But I will email you the name of that curriculum and the online links to so you can download it and really expand your repertoire of Common Core aligned computer science curriculum.
Now that sounds good.
Great. Awesome. Hey, thanks again, Julie. I appreciate you showing up. You know, you didn't have to. Were you worried about me?
No, Dan, I followed you around the state and we looked at scratch and, we never really sat down and looked at it together. So I was like, oh, this will be a chance for me to hear what you tell all those people. Yeah,
and that actually is a good point, because I think if we sat down and just played with it together before we did those initial runarounds, I bet we could have learned a lot together about some of its functionality. Honestly, Julie, some of the things that I was looking through Scratch, I didn't even know until like today. I was like, what's the Scratch statistics? And I found this and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like it shows like the number of monthly users. I mean, I don't know how relevant that is to a particular thing. And I should have saved some of these modifications that I did. If you change the number of steps, it ends up doing like ridiculous things. And I think kids have and I don't want to speak too much about it, but it begins to kind of get into this area that is actually not very common in I think schooling these days, which is like the borderline of like art and math and science and problem solving and creative thinking.
It's called STEAM, Dan.
Yeah. I think it's a fascinating thing. Anyway, I'm gonna get on the road. I'm gonna head back to Spearfish. Julie and Liz, thanks again for showing up, and I look forward to hearing about how this works out.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.